Okay, we'd like to get started, please.
Okay, but anyway, I'm just going to mention it.
We do have an emergency item that's been added to the work session agenda as well as the board agenda, and Madam Superintendent will speak to that in just a moment. Just want to say welcome to this September 18th work session. Thank you all for joining us. Madam Superintendent, the floor is all yours.
Good morning, everyone. This morning before you, we have several agenda items for discussion. The first one is going to be a restart program that provides funds for nonprofit, non-public supported schools. And I believe Mr. Colon and Ms. Longa, she's here. Good morning. If you would like to come forward with that one, please.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So we were blessed by the state and the federal government to receive extra funds, about $2.5 million. And they called it Restart in the spirit of this. These are funds that they realized we expended in order to restart school operations after the hurricanes. So it's a cute name and it's money, so we welcomed it. And so the intent of it was to replenish the funds that we used to restart after the hurricane. And we were required also to include charter schools and non-public schools, private schools. And so we did reach out to all of them, and we did have a few private schools that participated. And I'm not quite sure how deep you want me to go into it. I worked with finance office, and they helped us, thank you, Jason, to identify what items to include in the project. It cannot be items that, so they don't allow double dipping, right? So if FEMA's going to reimburse us for something, we won't be able to charge it to the Restart grant. But, so we included a variety of items in there, and the idea is to maximize all of the funding sources, whether FEMA, Restart. We also have an emergency impact for displaced students that is also in the making, so we have multiple funding sources, and the idea is to maximize the funds and cover as many expenses as possible.
Okay. We have Ms. Sellers, then Ms. Reynolds.
I answered a little bit. I was just asking I wanted to know what kind of restrictions. And do we get, is this our portion, or is this the total amount and we'll be giving some to the charters?
This is the total amount.
Okay.
And there are restrictions for this one. The supplement, not supplant restriction did apply to this project, so we're not able to replace things or expenditures that we would have been required to do anyway as a district. And we are not able to use these funds if we're going to be getting reimbursed from FEMA for that particular item. So there's so many things that we will not get reimbursed for, right? So that is the puzzle in the money distribution, is figuring out what this project can't cover, then this other one will cover.
So it's expenses that we've already expended, and we can replace the money if FEMA's not going to.
Yeah, the first priority would be to put down expenses that we've already incurred that FEMA won't reimburse, because then that's straight funds to the district. If we have to, and they're FEMA reimbursable and we get reimbursed, they will just not send us the FEMA funding. And so you gain some time on that, so we're going to kind of have it slotted. But to your first question, private and charter schools, the allocation, third line from the bottom is $53,000. If you see any budget impact analysis of that, that's within the total.
Oh, yes. Ms. Reynolds?
I think you answered a little bit of my question as well, but at the Central Florida Public School Board Coalition meeting last week, they were talking about federal relief dollars that had gone to the state and were then coming to us, and it looks like the state's keeping about 68% of what was allocated for polls. That's separate,
That's
correct?
the emergency impact for displaced students.
Okay.
So that's coming.
That is,
I'll hold my question.
You're absolutely correct, though. They
That
did.
they are holding 68% of what was allocated for polls.
and I think Orange did something, or I don't know.
Orange was 50%, Seminole was 64, Manatee was 44.
Yes, ma'am.
At least those are the numbers that they gave us last week.
So the more money that you get from the state, they take, and we are
The more they take.
receivers of more state money. Those are getting their more funding from their tax base, so we'll get hit harder than others.
Did you understand that correctly? Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was two separate things.
Ms. Fields?
I just want to know, is there a certain percentage for the private and charter schools allocation? Are you gonna divvy that out?
It's based on, the figure we have here is 53,542 in the,
Is there a percentage of distribution to the charter schools and the private schools, or, you know?
Each school had to submit information, there was an application and the students, and so it was all laid out based on the applications that they submitted. So they had to take the initiative to submit the application and request the funds.
And then you will distribute those funds until they have been exhausted? Is that how you're doing it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Wilson?
Not a question. I forgot to mention that Mr. Townsend's going to be a little bit late. He had to take a business call, so he'll be joining us in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on this item? Okay, thank you. Mr. Perone, you might as well keep your seat there. And I believe the next item that you have before you is going to be PA salaries and contract language changes. I believe Ms. Porteous is joining you with that item. Good morning. Good morning.
So we are pleased to alert you that we have tentatively agreed to accept a salary, or PEA has agreed to accept the salary proposal that the district has offered. That includes a $300 COLA, cost of living increase, and also 600 or 2 levels for effective staff and 3 levels for highly effective staff. Grandfathered will also receive $599 plus the COLA as well.
Any questions?
Wonderful news. When is this going to be voted on?
Today, we're having a special meeting.
PEA, though. When does PEA plan to have their?
Oh,
PEA plans to have their meeting.
We actually, the ballots will go out next Monday, and the vote count will be on the night of the 2nd. And as is our tradition, we will alert all of you as to the outcome of the count as soon as it's complete.
thank you, Mary.
And if they do ratify, we hope to have it in the October votes, no
Oh,
later than
October.
November.
Oh.
Yes.
We're working on it as if everything's
It's
going to
going
go
to pass.
through.
Yes,
So we're keeping our fingers
And-
crossed.
and-
but-
that was my question. Are you hearing positive things?
So if I may be honest, obviously it is not as much money as anybody would have hoped for, but it is the best we can do in the financial situation of what the board's funding is. But really the biggest concern that we're hearing is about the switch from Walgreens,
Yes.
from, to Walgreens.
I know.
We'll have all of the concerns that we're getting, we're going to let you know about, so that when you negotiate your contract with Walgreens, we can talk about those things. And the health insurance increases. But PEA has been clear all along. We were very appreciative when Mike Perone and Jason came and spoke to our board last year to set the stage for the actual concerns about insurance. And we were very, very clear, and you worked with us to change, to make changes that were not quite as bad as they could be, but any change, is something that's going to cost. So those are the main things, but we hope we're on par for a ratification. But those are the things that we're hearing. So I have to, you asked, I'm being honest.
Thank you.
Ms. Fields and Ms. Reynolds?
Well, a little bit related to what Mary Ann just said, I wanted to, first of all, I know the answer to the question, but I'm going to pose it anyway. Is this the best that we can do? And the issue with Walgreens, making sure that we address that. And, I think at some point in time, we need to make sure that we start including our health insurance as a benefit without, when we present, because like with the starting teacher's salary, we have that, but what are the benefits for single coverage? If you calculated that monthly, what would that end up being? It would be a lot more than what the starting salary is. And I don't think that we, in my opinion, I don't think that we show that as we should.
Actually, to your last question, we do, when we recruit, we worked with Rachel's office to develop a flyer that we use on recruiting trips. And essentially it says 60% is your salary, another 15% are benefits for health insurance. And then we break out every other benefit, your leave days and all that stuff. So to show 100% package in terms of what you're getting when you join the district.
And so that amount is figured into the total offer. I mean, like if it's $6,000, it's figured into that offer for the teachers, where they can actually literally see the dollar amount.
When we hire, when we initially
Okay, well, I
onboard,
think,
yes ma'am.
and that's good.
I'll show you.
But I think that we need to do that just in general.
Right.
So, if may I say, one of the things that you worked with us on that was very important was the fact that the benefit of not having an employee premium is viewed as a very strong benefit. It's an attractor benefit,
Correct.
and it's a retention benefit. And so the fact that you worked with us to be able to retain that was, I think, a good piece. I will tell you that other counties surrounding us, many of them have some. We looked at what other counties have in terms of premiums. So that is, I agree with Ms. Fields, that is a strong attractor piece for us. And it was a valuable save, I believe, in our effort to gain and retain people.
And I just don't think that, I think that we could do a better job with that, in my opinion.
I think we need to do that, absolutely. And again, I'm remiss not to say thank you, because we ended up with moving forward. But if we're going to actually gain and retain what we need to figure this out. And frankly, I'm going to say something. One of the things that PEA is working on is the ballot box in November, because we cannot continue to elect people that starve our public school system. It limits the resources we have to do what we need to be able to do. So there's a multi-reasons of things that we need to do to make sure that we have enough funding to run the system and run it well, and part of that includes gaining and retaining the staff we need at every level.
Ms. Reynolds, then Mr. Wilson.
My question was kind of along the same lines. Is there a way that we can put out bullet points of what is changing? Because some of the questions that I've gotten are, for instance, I've emailed one of them, but the second line on the insurance that says, I can't remember, the clinic access fee,
That's caused a lot
that
of.
people seem to think, which we all asked the same question when we were in here, but the general public doesn't have the opportunity of having you in front of them.
So PEA is responsible for announcing and putting that out, and that has gone out several times. And in fact, we're going to share our frequently asked questions piece with Rachel, so you can put it on your web as well, but that has been explained. We did a frequently asked questions piece that has gone out and will go out again, explaining those pieces. And I will tell you that we are getting the message out, because the number of questions now have dwindled to a handful in the last 2 days. But yeah, we've explained that the confusion they had is they thought that the clinic was going to start to cost $40.
Right.
That's all been out there and explained.
And I've had a question, or someone told me they're voting no because they're gonna have to pay at the clinic, and I said, you do not have to. So we need to work with Marion again and just keep sending it out.
Right.
It would be great if we could put it out on the website and on, a link on Facebook too, just
Right.
because I think as far as, it's great for the teachers that we already have that we're trying to retain, but as far as attracting new people, if you see all of this negative feedback on Facebook, why would you want to go work in that district?
We're going to share it with Rachel
Awesome.
this after, or when we get done here, and then she'll be able to get it out to them.
Perfect. Thank
We'll
you.
include it with our news release posted on the social website.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mr. Wilson.
So, as I've been out talking to folks about the sales tax referendum, I've been collecting information, as y'all know, and business office has been very helpful. I appreciate that. I seem to recall at one time the district was getting over $30 million a year in PICO funds. Seems to me I saw a number $32 million at one time, several years ago. And now we get less than $2 million a year. That's a $30 million tax cut for facilities. And it's not been addressed by the state. That's rather stunning to me. We know that while property values increase, we don't get the benefit of that because of millage rate rollbacks. So, and we got the numbers on that. That costs us $50 million a year. Let that sink in for a moment, $50 million a year. Now, we're not talking about holding the line on taxes. And we're not talking about raising taxes. We're talking about effectively tax cuts. As I understand it, that $50 million might cost the average taxpayer $50. Is that pretty fair? Is that a pretty fair statement?
Yeah, it's a small number, it's not that.
It's not very big. So in addition to that, we know that our lottery funds went, what, from $326 to $32 per student? And my best estimate of that, and I could be all wet, was around $30 million. And if you add that up, it's $110 million a year. So think about that for a moment. I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in holding the line on taxes, but we're talking about tax cuts. And here's the part of it that is most frustrating for me. I want to be fair as I can be, is that on top of that, we're being asked to provide more services. They're called unfunded mandates. So our funds are being cut at a time when we're being asked to provide more services. So as I've been out around the community, I've been sharing that message with our community leader. I think they're starting to understand that. We as a community need to pull together and send that message to Tallahassee that they can't keep doing that to us. It's one thing to hold the line on taxes. It's another thing to cut taxes while increasing the services that we're required to provide. It's just not reasonable. And I hope, you know, I've said this, I think our teachers are worth so much more than what we're doing for them, but we're going to need help from the state, and I think we all understand that, and I hope that they understand that as well and realize that we're doing what we can, and we're going to be, and I think our leadership is going to be working with our community leaders to get that message out to Tallahassee as well. So that's where it's going to come from. That's where we need to focus as a community, and I hope everybody understands that.
Any more questions? Okay.
And by the way, if I've misrepresented something or misstated something, please correct me, because I want to make sure that I'm being fair with those numbers I'm throwing around.
So the next item we also have is the AFSCME health plan. And Mr. Carone and Ms. Porteous will be presenting the AFSCME health plan that's coming before you.
So we needed to bring this because this is part of the AFSCME plan. We've already brought you the salaries for that group. But you have the plan which we have summarized for you in the, and I'll point out here, this is where we have the change to the pharmacy going to Walgreens. So that is one of the things, but we have the whole package that we've seen before. We brought this to you for PEA, and this is just for the full group for AFSCME now that we did not bring to you.
And we did bargain them together, so we're just
They're
bringing
the
this.
same.
They're the
Yeah.
same,
Oh, okay.
yes,
They're the
yes,
same.
they're actually the
Come
same.
separately.
It's just bringing the AFSCME piece forward to you.
Okay.
Good, Ms. Fields?
I don't have any questions, but I know how critical this piece has been to this group, that I hear it all the time, so I'm very thankful. I'm thankful that we did not have to have them pay anything towards their coverage, because I know that would have been very hard for the majority of them, so thank you guys for working through that as well, so that was very important.
Any other questions on AFSCME? Okay, before that will conclude both of the groups' presentation for today. And we have an emergency item that before we move to an executive session, I know we're ahead of schedule, Mr. Chair. But we have an emergency item that came before you with Head Start, continuation grant preschool programs. This item, we put on the agenda today, and it's going to be back to back. We added it to the board meeting as well, because it has to be signed back to the state by the 30th of this month for us to get the inflows money coming into us. But Maria Longus, I know Maddie Free hasn't made it as yet, but Maria can speak to this grant. But we wanted you to bring it before you because of the amount and to make sure that you are all aware of it. Maria?
Yes, and I'm happy to fill in. I don't know if I can answer specific questions. I didn't. Oh, awesome.
Come on in right on time.
God listens to you.
But this is a good thing for us. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming over. So we just introduced the fact that we just added as an emergency grant. And if you want to kind of expound on it a little bit, and we can take some questions if the board has any questions regarding it.
First, thank you so much for offering that emergency item. The continuation grant for Head Start is has no new positions, and it did have an additional COLA dollar that we were just granted a few weeks ago. The COLA grant was around $228,000 more dollars to our continuation grant. So all of those funds have been added into the project for next school year. I'm sorry, not next school year, next fiscal year. Head Start year runs from January 1 to December 31. And so we split our activities for the funding for over 2 school years. It's a little bit more complicated, but actually it works out fine for us.
And I just want to say to the board, this emergency item, it has nothing to do with you not getting it in on time. It's the timeline that the federal government, by the time you get the information, they want this quick turnaround. It happened last year, the same thing.
But I did do an error, and it was my fault for putting it on the contracts agenda rather than directly to the board. So although I really appreciate that support, I did an error by putting it on the contracts instead of directly to the board. I do have a 3-week turnaround
Yeah,
period.
but see, that's very short in getting everything on.
We probably ought to mention what we sometimes refer to as an emergency item. That may be a little bit of a misnomer. The statutes specifically allow you the flexibility to amend the agenda so long as the chair finds good cause to do so. And in a case like this, where it's something that needs to be signed by a particular date and you don't have another meeting until October, it's designed to allow that. So I don't want to send the wrong message. It's not that it is an emergency, it's just that the statute specifically allows you that flexibility with your agenda. Yes, ma'am.
And we have changed our board meetings from twice to once, and that also complicated the issue. But again, thank you. We do have currently 942 children enrolled in Head Start around the county. We have 474 children who are on a waiting list, but not all of those children are income eligible, foster care, homeless, or under SSI. So those children would have to undergo a second screening in order to determine whether or not they're high risk enough to get into Head Start, with 170 some odd students eligible and waiting to enter. I believe the program is necessary for Polk County, and it has served the county well since 2008.
And certainly that's an appropriate item to include on the regular agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That will conclude all the discussion items for the day, and including the Head Start continuation grant. Mr. Chair, if you would like, I can turn the meeting over to you, and if you would like to move the executive session, since we are ahead of schedule after the board, it's your...
Are we okay with that, board members? Okay. So really a very abbreviated portion of the meeting today. Are there any questions or comments about the agenda? We'll start with that. I think we pretty much have been over it, but if anybody has any additional questions or comments about the agenda. Okay, if there are none, do we have any board members' comments? Yes, ma'am.
I attended the state, school board's, state board meeting for the Florida School Board Association. And there were some items that they brought up, and one of the ones Volusia County brought up now with the legalizing of medical marijuana in Florida, even though the federal laws, it's illegal. Volusia County had an instance where it was a medically fragile child, I believe, that had seizures. And so they were taking this medicine, but it can't be in the school. They wanted the school to dispense it. And it's against federal law if a LPN or nurse or anyone dispensed it to a child, they would lose their license. So they encouraged the districts to get a policy written about this issue, and Volusia's already done some of this work, and they suggested that our district contact their lawyer because they've got groundwork, they've even got a PowerPoint on it. But I just brought it forward because they said you will be getting children that will be parents wanting you to give their children this, it's a liquid, but it's against the law federally, even though I really don't understand how states can make laws that conflict with the federal government. But anyway, it's something that we should look at, and I'm assuming they already have a policy, and maybe even Neola might have some help in getting a policy written for us, just to protect our employees and to be able to talk and discuss with parents who may not understand why we can't dispense. And I believe, I talked briefly with Wes, well, I think Volusia, the parents were coming. I don't even know if you want it on campus, even if the parent's dispensing it, but.
As you can imagine, it is a topic of much discussion. It is also a very sensitive topic, and I'm unaware, I'll certainly talk with their attorney to find out what they might be doing policy-wise. Most of the districts thus far, there's a specific law that says we can't receive it and store it in our schools. But I think most of the districts in the state right now are adopting the posture that if a parent wishes to administer medical marijuana to a child, they're welcome to do so. We're not going to, the districts are not administering it and are not storing it on the campus. But as that unfolds, I'm sure there will be a policy solution to that we'll be bringing to you. And just so you'll know, we're also looking at a similar question when it comes to employee use medical marijuana. So those are subjects that are the subjects of hot debate.
So anyway, the board may want to look at policies concerning this issue. We discussed Amendment 1 and Amendment 5. Of course, Amendment 8 is gone, although the Florida School Board Association said the legislature may deal with some of those issues that were in Amendment 8 and bring them forward as legislation. But Amendment 1 with the additional homestead exemption, we talked about it being another local control issue that's taking local control away from local county commissions in adding that additional homestead exemption. And while it does not affect us, because the additional homestead exemption, just like the last one, doesn't apply to schools taxation, but it is a local control issue. So some of the different individual school boards are working with their local governments to support them, because the local governments are fighting this as a local control issue, and we know a lot about fighting for local control. And Amendment 5, of course, is, I believe it's what they call the tabler, and the legislature has to have a supermajority in order to increase taxes, and so that's also of concern. So we just discussed those. I don't believe the School Board Association is going to take any official position, but they encouraged local school boards to work with their counties and give them support if they wish to give the local government support. And there's, I have another, there's a cooperative purchasing organization out there, one that we tried to do about 10 to 12 years ago at the state level with the Florida School Board Association. This one was begun by the Texas State School Board Association, and they were successful in getting it off, and then they had, I think, Louisiana and maybe Mississippi, 2 other states that wanted to join into their cooperative purchasing. This is where business services can get good prices. Well, now it's gone national, and not only school boards are joining it, but are the associations and different school boards, but other governmental agencies. So I brought back the book. I was going to give it to the superintendent. Our Florida School Board Association has endorsed, they recommend that we look at it. It's free to join, and you can buy or not buy the items on here, but they're very good prices because now it's gone national. Lots of governmental entities belong to it, so you get a good price because of the great purchasing power. So we had a session on it, and there's information in there if our business services would like to join in, and it may save us some money, and it costs nothing. And they actually give some points or something to the Florida School Board Association when things are purchased. So it sounds like it's a win-win. I don't know how you could lose on joining because you're not required to buy from them. You can choose to buy from the list. And that concludes my information.
Thank you, Mrs. Sellers.
I attended the Florida Public School Board Coalition meeting last Monday, and there were a couple interesting things. Pasco County has recently started a Citizens Academy, which Orange, Seminole, and a couple other districts are also doing. And it's very similar to how our chambers do Leadership Winter Haven or Leadership Polk, but it's for education, and the district puts it on. Pasco, I think, said they had 45 citizens go through it this year, and it's basically just kind of so that the community knows what's happening in the school district and has a better understanding. And Seminole and Orange both have been doing it for years and have said that it's been highly successful. So I thought that might be something we'd be interested in looking at. Also, December 8th, the Florida Supreme Court is hearing the education funding lawsuit that was filed about 10 years ago. And then as I mentioned before, we talked quite a bit about the federal relief dollars that the federal government distributed to the state. The state is keeping $47 million and dispersing $46 million of the money that was sent from the federal government. So I know Wendy's been working on that along with several other government relations people from other districts, but most districts are not seeing more than 50% of their money. Manatee was one of the rarities that's getting 56%. So just something to keep our eyes on.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds. Anything else? Yes, ma'am. Ms. Fields?
I had a community volunteer coach who's also a parent who approached me about one of our policies, and I believe we made some revisions. The policy number is 9200 and it's concerning volunteers, and I've spoken to Ms. Tedra about it as well as Ms. Jackie, and I want to request that we have time at one of our work sessions to discuss it because it impacts this gentleman along with others where they have maybe done some things that were not pleasing many years ago, and it's impacting them being able to typically even volunteer with their child going on a field trip or something like that. And so I would like to have it on the agenda for discussion and see if it's any way for us to make some decisions so that a parent is not punished for not being able to do things, nothing related to children. My understanding, this charge is nothing related to children. He's not able to volunteer or go on field trips to do anything with his daughter. So I don't know what that looks like as far as getting it on the agenda, but
We'll get it on. Mrs. Warrington, would you put that on the next agenda?
Bridges as well about it.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. We'll get that on next.
Thank you.
Any other board comments? I have a couple of announcements. The Florida School Boards Association's 73rd Annual Joint Conference will be held November 27th through 30th, 2018. If you would like to attend or plan to attend, please let Susan know as soon as possible so that we can make arrangements for that. Ashley Troutman is the chair for the half-cent Sales Tax Oversight Committee, and there are some upcoming presentations, and he wanted me to mention these to the board members, so if anyone was interested in attending any of these, please let Ashley know, and if you need his contact information, get with me, and I'm happy to get that to you if you don't have it. The first one's Haines City Rotary Club. Actually, I've already talked to them. You can go back and talk to them again.
More the merrier.
But they're endorsing it, so we're good. Kathleen High School SAC Committee, that's Tuesday, September 25th at 5:30 at Kathleen High School. I think we have the retreat that day, but this is after the retreat, so if anyone would like to do that. Davenport School of the Arts Combined PTO and SAC Committee meeting Thursday, October 4th at 6 o'clock. Davenport School of the Arts. Lake Wales Rotary Club, we're not going to be able to make that because we have meetings that day. Citrus Center Kiwanis Club, Thursday, October 25th at 7:30. That's at Cleveland Heights. And the Central Florida Business Diversity Council, Wednesday, October 31st at 9:30. And this says in my office, so apparently that's in Ashley Troutman's office, so we'll have to get with him to figure out where that is if somebody would like to go to that one.
Can we get a copy of that?
Yes, ma'am.
What time are they? Are they most of them 6?
I'm sorry?
Oh, did you get that? I didn't get that. 6 p.m.
Okay, so,
I got it.
so you should have a copy of your work session.
Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Townsend, we're just having board member comments. If you'd like to offer any comments, okay? So I think that, did I miss anything? Yes, ma'am.
In case any of you are wondering, the lip sync battle is on October 10th, and it's going to be awesome. So you should come out and support myself. Gina Williams, principal at Winter Haven High School, is also lip syncing. So it is sure to be a good time. And I have one of the best backup dancers in the world, Mr. John Hill. So,
Wow. YouTube, here we come.
are interested, let me know. Tickets are on sale now. It is October 10th, Wednesday night at Theater Winter Haven. It's going to be a blast. So.
And that will be worth the price of admission.
Amen.
It will.
Amen.
What time?
It, I believe, starts at 6. Or starts at 6, and I think it starts at 7.
Might need a double after
Okay, any other comments? All right, well, in that case, I think we're ready for our executive session.
You have a volunteer, you want to talk about volunteer application fee? You have that one there.
Oh, I do? I apologize. So, well, I think, the volunteer application fee, which is different than the policy that Ms. Fields, okay. So I think there was an item to talk to on our agenda. I don't see that, but we'll talk about that. The volunteer application fee.
It's on the bottom of the work session and under new business. There, the last one.
It is. I apologize. So, Mrs. Asher?
No, that,
No, sorry.
We got one
have
more
another
item.
Okay, no, no,
So is somebody going to talk to us
Sorry.
about that?
that's
Or are we
Rachel,
having that
it's
conversation?
Rachel and Jeanette.
Quick as possible. Okay. Good morning, everyone. We're here to talk to you about the increase in fees for our applications, or for our volunteers. And we want to just start out by saying that we recognize how valuable our volunteers are to our schools, and the decision to increase the application fee was not done haphazardly or carelessly, and it was not done in a vacuum. So we're going to explain why we're at the why we decided to increase the fee and what we're going to get for that increased fee. So just a little history. The volunteer program was previously managed in Genesis. We had for about a decade, charged $25 for a volunteer to, the application fee was $25. That includes $24 that is charged by the FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, to do a level 1 background check, which our policy requires of our volunteers. In addition to the $24, we charge $1, which covers the handbook that volunteers receive, as well as their badge. I'll get into those fees a little bit more in depth in a few minutes. So Genesis is what we were using to manage our volunteer program. Genesis, of course, has been replaced by Focus. So we had to decide how we were going to manage our volunteers because the system we were using was going away. So Jeanette, as well as Safe Schools and IT and our legal department met several times and talked in depth about the best options for replacing Genesis. Related to this, you know that Raptor was instituted last year for visitor sign-in. And the reason why Safe Schools recommended and supported the switch to Raptor, replacing FastPass, is that Raptor does, it can offer, every time a person signs in, it does a sexual offender database check. And Raptor also offers a number of services, a number of other background checks. So when we needed to identify a system to replace Genesis, Raptor was Safe Schools and Legal's top recommendation. Both were adamant that we use Raptor. We already had a relationship with Raptor for our visitor sign-in. Rather than go find another system or develop our own system, use the system we already have in place for visitors. The benefits of using Raptor to manage our volunteers are that Raptor, it offers a national background check, a social security number verification, address verification, multiple name alias check, and terror watch list check. Also, I talked to Captain Seymour yesterday. A huge benefit from a Safe Schools perspective of Raptor is that it's a web-based system. They can log in from any computer and see who is on campus in real time. So she talked about if there's a critical incident at one of our schools, Raptor having one interface that manages both visitors and volunteers, that's going to help them respond to those incidents quicker because they can go to one system and see who is on that campus. So they can reunite or they can respond to the incident quicker because they actually have that information in real time. Whereas if we have separate systems for visitors and volunteers, that adds to their process. So for all those reasons, Raptor was the recommendation from Safe Schools and Legal, that it consolidates our systems, visitors and volunteers will be managed in one system, and Raptor has the ability to offer all these other layers, the national background checks, terror watch lists, all these other things, which in this day and age of school safety, we all feel is extremely important. What Raptor did not offer as part of their package that they offered to us was the FDLE level 1, which our policy requires. We have to do that. So when we got with Raptor, they said we can build that into our system, but that will raise the fee to $39. So that covers the $24 the FDLE charges for level 1 background check, and it's $15 to cover, again, the national background check, the social security number verification, address verification, multiple name alias check, and terror watch list check, as well as a sex offender database search. So that got us to $39, okay? And just a side point, there are, in researching this, the CFDC tells us there's 1,000 people a day moving into Polk County. A month.
I'm sorry, a month, so sorry. 1,000 people a month moving into Polk County. Okay. Right, 1,000 a month to Polk County. So those are people who are coming, many of them out of state. So all the more reason to be checking nationally for their criminal histories. We were not doing that previously. We only did the FDLE, which is state.
So that gets us to $39 plus $1, which is what we've long charged for the handbook and for the badge. Just for information, there is no money being made here. It actually costs us about $1.85 when you add up the cost to print the handbook, the actual plastic for your card, the badge, the printing of the badge. It's about $1.85 that we're spending to get those materials. We're charging $1. So we are passing on the cost to the volunteers of the actual background checks, just what we're being charged by our company to do FDLE and all these national background checks. So that's how we got here, is that we, from a safe schools perspective and a legal perspective, we really feel it's important to institute these background checks on our volunteers now, especially as we roll out the Guardian program, and we are, with Marjorie Stoneman Douglas having just recently gone into effect, it all makes sense that these changes happen now. We know that in addition to this, we're also instituting a 5-year renewal process. Prior to this, you could have applied to be a volunteer 20 years ago and you never had to renew. So we think to keep that current and to make sure that the right people are in our schools, we think it's really, and that aligns with what we require from our employees. There's a 5-year background check that our employees undergo as well every 5 years. So we think that's really important to make sure that we're doing everything we can to safeguard our students, when it comes to who's on campus. We know that $40 is burdensome to many people. That is not lost on us. We know that this is a big increase. We are exploring other funding sources that might be able to help offset that. We're going to be communicating those to the principals. What we're doing in our office is being as proactive in communicating it as possible. So we were at the principals meeting before the start of the school year, letting principals know this change was coming. We provided materials in English and Spanish. You have one in front of you, Ms. Fields, so that they can publicize this on their campuses. We'll be doing school messengers. We did social media posts. It's on the website. It's been in the paper at least a couple of times. The more notice we can give, if they apply now, between now and November 1st, they can still get in on that $25 fee. So we're doing everything we can to get them in, and we're looking at funding sources to help offset it because we know that it's burdensome. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, let me suggest, you've done a great job in all the things you just explained, because I've seen it on social media, the principals they're in all the communication, but I think the piece that might be missing is the detailed information you gave this morning.
Okay.
And I know you don't want to give too much, I don't know where that fine line is, but I believe if you could just do a quick, here's your, I understand it's going up to $40, 29, or whatever you said, 24 something is this, 15 is this, the badge costs $1.85, we're charging $1 to you, and the district is picking up the cost of the other 85 cents plus the cost of the handbook or whatever. Because most people are like, oh, here they go, another 50, here they go.
Okay.
It's a way for us to raise money for schools. Not. This has totally got to do with the cost, and you outlined it beautifully, and I don't know to what detail you can put that new program includes, the FDLE, it includes sex offender, it includes blah, 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 nationally. I just think that is very powerful. Because most parents, if I read that and I'm like, wait a minute, it's $15 more, but holy gracious, all these different things are that ensures me that my child, another step to making them safer. It's just it's devil's in the details kind of thing, rather than just saying it costs us more. Once you define it, it's very important, and I appreciate you doing the other things to try to make it more affordable for some as well, because the bottom line, for some people, they just can't do it no matter what, and I get that. But I think for most, if they understood that would be great.
Okay, we'll make sure that's very clear.
Just a thought.
I appreciate it, thank you.
I was just going to say, if you put out a social media that we can share, because they've already gotten me, I've already signed up, so I got the $25 price. And maybe there's a local charities that would give us a grant And after somebody gets so many hours,
Right.
they get a reimbursement. Because you can see where if you open it up for free, everybody's gonna sign up
Right.
and maybe not volunteer that much, and it's too costly.
Right, that's what, we do know some schools are doing
Some
that,
schools do
after
that.
they
You just
put in a certain number of hours, they'll reimburse, so
The
that's
PTAs.
part of what, when we go meet with the principals, we can talk to them about, here are some ways to help offset that, and if it's a reimbursement after X number of hours, we do know some are doing that. And we did talk to United Way, they're gonna send us some, they don't have the money themselves to help with this, but they know, they're gonna research maybe grant opportunities that we could apply for that might be available. No guarantees,
But
but
that-
we are exploring that at least.
And that's also a good motivation for them to put in those kinds of, whatever the
Right.
threshold is for being reimbursed.
Yeah. Mrs. Fields?
I was basically going to say what Mrs. Sellers said about maybe some foundations, maybe Givewell Community Foundation.
Right.
And also, I wanted to know, is there any way for us to figure out how much monies have been expended on an annual basis on volunteer background checks for the last few years? And if there might be a possibility of business partners adopting or contributing towards whatever the cost of the background screening is, so that the volunteer has to pay nothing. I mean,
We can try. You wanted to know the expenditures now?
for how many volunteers have we had for the last, just say last year, and
Okay.
how much was that?
Okay,
If we would have had to pay that, how much would it have been? I don't want an answer today, I'm just saying.
okay,
And that could be the goal of the business partners, or
Right.
maybe when the grant is done, maybe that amount can be submitted as a request to support the volunteers for a year or whatever.
so in 2017-18, we approved 2,433 volunteers, and that
Okay, so
came out to, through FDLE, that came out times 24, that's somewhere in the 60,000 range,
Okay.
a little 60 and change, so that's what just last year was.
You might be able to get a foundation or someone to fund that.
Okay. Any ideas we will take?
Ms. Reynolds?
Yeah, those were two of the questions that I had asked, was how many each year for the past 5 years, and how much have we been spending on this, or how much would it cost us to pick up those
Right,
funds?
we can send you everything for
Okay.
5 years, I
That
know
would
that, we
be-
can send, we'll send it to Ms. Worthington, and all the board members can get it.
Because
Okay,
I would
you're right, you're right.
really like for us to find a way to cover volunteer costs that we can't, I mean, it's ridiculous to me that we charge volunteers to come and help us. That
Right.
just seems like
Right.
which I'm not saying that I don't want them
Right.
to go through background checks, but
There is,
It's-
it gets a little more complicated. The policy actually says that background, the fees must be at the volunteer's expense. So we have to be careful about, I think a reimbursement.
our policy says it. We can change
Yeah,
our
we can
policy.
certainly change that policy.
Oh, that's an easy one. That's the easy part.
Okay, that would make it easy.
But we need to find a way to fund that somehow, and maybe the PTAs and PTOs is one answer, and maybe the local foundations is an answer too.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
How much of the enhancements to it that we're doing are actually requirements imposed by law, and how much are what we're doing as part of what Raptor does?
FDLE is our policy. There is, the state statute does require the national background check and sex offender.
What do we get out of FDLE that we don't get out of what we're doing? Like I mean, what is, if it sounds like the Raptor card has X amount of stuff built into it. FDLE has X amount of stuff built into it.
So is it
What's the
redundant?
overlap, and what are we not getting? If for instance, if we did away with FDLE, are we still compliant with law, and are we still getting what we need?
We may be, I'm not sure, but we would have to revise the policy to eliminate the FDLE.
Well, I'd much rather revise the policy than impose the charge.
Okay.
I mean, that seems like common sense to me. Is there?
So I think the question is there overlap between the two agencies?
Right.
And
I'm
if
not
we-
sure on that.
If we could answer that, maybe
Okay.
we could talk about the policy.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, if we got rid of, if we can get rid of the FDLE part,
Mhm.
not impose the charge and get all the same effect we're already getting, that seems like common sense. I don't know if that's true.
Okay.
Second question. Is there any capacity for, using Title I stuff for the, like?
We
for-
did include it, an addendum to the Title I application. We've not gotten
Okay.
word yet whether that's been approved.
Okay,
That
and,
would
and
allow
third,
us.
can we actually, to Sarah Beth's point about not charging as a whole, can we add something to our legislative request that says the state really ought to be in the business of helping to fund volunteer applications? I think we're gonna have a new regime one way or another, and it'd be interesting to put some priorities to them. So I would recommend that.
Okay, I'll get you an answer about the FDLE
Yeah.
overlap perhaps. Okay.
Mr. Harris?
Observation and a suggestion.
Okay.
Talking about having outside entities pay for the annual costs that we have for volunteers. In terms of sponsorship, you could name the volunteer program after the sponsoring company
Okay.
and promote and tout that as so-and-so's volunteer program in Polk County Schools. Another board that I previously served on had a number of people volunteer in that organization, and one of the things that was done every year was a financial calculation of the value all the volunteers' hours brought to the organization. Good marketing, public relations effort to make the community aware that we had X number of people volunteer based on an X dollar amount value for their quote-unquote employment.
Right.
How much value did that add to the organization in a year's period of time? And this was an annual report that we received to show the board there was some value in the people in the community who stepped forward and said, yes, I'll help out.
Right.
That somehow mentally, not financially, but mentally will help offset the financial cost that is, incurred, because the community will value, I think, the employees, the volunteers even more, because they will then see, well, we kind of helped avoid some expenditures by all these people volunteering X number of dollars of their hours.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions?
Can
Yes.
we make sure that this gets on the agenda for our next work session?
Certainly. So we have 2 items related to volunteers for the next agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm especially interested in the possible overlap, because that could be a significant savings.
I think it.
Okay, anything else?
Take a break.
I think we'll take a break, and then we'll come back for executive session.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes,
we
sir.
had an attorney-client session scheduled. I've spoken with outside counsel, and the need for that has not yet ripened, so I've canceled that.
Okay, so then we're adjourned until 12:30, I guess, is that correct?
Well, after the executive session.
There was an attorney-client.
Oh,
Yeah, there was an attorney-client session also scheduled, which the need has not yet
Okay,
ripened.
so we're still going to have the executive session,
Yes,
which
sir.
is
I'm sorry
unrelated
for
to
the
the
confusion.
attorney-client.
We had 2
Yeah.
things.
I'm assuming that we're doing, or that we can't, like, we still have to do the meeting at 12:30, like this.
We
just like
advertise.
that.
Right. Yeah, we can start later, but we can't start earlier.